couple of things that I thought were worthy of hitting. Congratulations to the Texas Rangers for ending our long prohibition on full stadiums and arenas in this country in the world of pro sports. Essentially, since we had the positive test of Rudy Gobert back, I think it was on March the 11th of last year, it has been utterly quiet in the arenas and in the stadiums where our favorite athletes play. And by and large, that is because there haven't been any crowds. And it's been increasingly and wildly strange to be dealing with that scenario. And so to see the video, and I tweeted it out, and the mentions, not surprisingly, were a total mess because a lot of you are ready to be back in stadiums, and then there's the Corona bros out there that are never going to be ready to be back in stadiums again. But I thought it was an important marker in our overall trajectory, and assuming, as has been the report, that basically anybody who wants a vaccine is going to have access to a vaccine really by the end of April, it feels like, but certainly into May. I don't understand why every baseball stadium is not going to be totally full by mid to late May. And look, if you don't want to go, and I've been saying this for a long time, you don't feel safe, you don't have to go. But I'll tell you this, I mean, my parents and my in-laws have all had the vaccine now. They are all 75 or older, essentially, and they're all back to 100% living their lives normally. We went out to Utah, and I had my father-in-law and my stepmother-in-law staying with us in a condo while my wife and the kids were all skiing. And then this past weekend for Easter, I had my mother-in-law and my stepfather-in-law staying in our house. Yesterday, I went out to lunch with my entire family, my mom and dad, and everybody was eating and ready to roll. And not that my family itself has really ever been that fearful, but I think what we've reached is just such an interesting spot where people who were oldest and had the most risk from COVID have effectively moved on in terms of feeling fearful. And so if that's not you, I understand that perspective, but I think you saw in that stadium when there were 40,000 people there, hey, this is where we are right now with the ability to get back to some form of normalcy. Did you watch that video, Dub, of all the fans that were in the stands?
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, because that's something that we haven't seen in well over a year.
Yeah,
it was great to see.
And it felt normal to see that. And by the way, Danny G, and I don't even know how in the world this is a rule, but he flew. Did you see this? He flew to Denver to go watch the Dodgers in Colorado over the weekend. And then he flew back to L.A., and there's some sort of loophole rule that is in place that if that happens, like you don't have to work for the week because you're supposed to quarantine. I don't know if he's actually quarantining, but I don't even know if he had to take vacation time. Did you see this? Like, we don't have that rule in Tennessee. Like, I work from home, so I wouldn't really ever be able to take advantage of that rule anyway. But did you know that did he tell you that was the rule in L.A. right now?
Well, I noticed something funny on the schedule email that was sent out last week. So I shot him a text, and he ran through the whole scenario. So, hey, not a bad gig if you can get it. Go to a baseball game and then not have to show up to work for a week. Sign me up there.
Yeah, not only that, he went on an airplane to a baseball game, and then he came back, and now he's in Pasadena just chilling for the whole week because he's supposed to quarantine. But I don't even know that this counts as vacation time. Like, he just gets to sit at home. And he got to go to go watch the game already, which is kind of a crazy position to be in. And I understand that it might be a rule, but this seems like one that could be exploited and taken advantage of quite a bit. You think it's a Fox Sports Radio rule?
I think, but, knowing me, I would probably take advantage of this rule.
Oh, you would. So you've been on an airplane every week for like 15 straight weeks.
I'd be off for like months at a time at this point.
If that was the rule, there's no doubt you wouldn't have shown up at work for months. So I thought that was fantastic. And look, if you are, again, I just want to reiterate this, if you are of the opinion that you don't want to be in a crowd. I understand that, but just based on the number of people that were there, I think that it's further evidence that Twitter COVID obsession is not a obsession that the rest of the world necessarily overlaps with. And this is why I always say, like, only 2% of people in the country are actually active on Twitter. And certainly, I don't know what percentage of the fans that were in that stadium are super active on Twitter, but that's not the Blue Checkmark Brigade. The Blue Checkmark Brigade was terrified that that was actually going on in any way. And by the way, the All-Star game, I was on Fox News again last night. We had Brian Kemp on, the governor of Georgia, to discuss the latest on what Georgia had going on in terms of their anger over the All-Star game being pulled. But as a part of that, they also, I thought Marco Rubio did a really good job of asking a question of Rob Manfred. I don't know how many people saw this, but I'm going to read from Marco Rubio's letter, which I thought was so incredibly well put. And here's what Marco Rubio said. Last week you decided the opening sentence is pretty fantastic because the Masters is going on. And Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, says, I write to ask whether you intend to maintain your membership at the Augusta National Golf Club. As you are well aware, the exclusive members-only club is located in the state of Georgia. So if Rob Manfred finds the state of Georgia to be so offensive in the way that they have applied the laws here, then I think it's a fantastic question about whether or not he is willing to abandon his Masters membership, which I bet he is not, and there hasn't been very much discussion about. And he also pointed out that the Major League Baseball, he asked, will they now end its engagement with nations that don't hold elections at all, like China and Cuba? Will you end your lucrative financial relationship with Tencent, a company with deep ties to the Communist Party and actively helps the Chinese government hunt down and silence political dissidents? And I would bet that the answer, of course, is going to be no to that question, but I do think it is a fantastic question that should be asked in general. And he further builds by saying, I am under no illusion you intend to resign as a member from Augusta National Golf Club. To do so would require a personal sacrifice as opposed to the woke corporate virtue signaling of moving the All-Star game from Atlanta. And what's also wild about this is the All-Star game being moved from Atlanta. If you actually look at the reports that have come out about Coors Field being able to host the Major League Baseball All-Star game, Denver and the city of Denver and the state of Colorado actually has more restrictive rules for elections than the state of Georgia does. So Major League Baseball has taken the All-Star game from Atlanta and moved it to Denver, and in the process they have, in the name of treating everyone to make sure that all votes count, they've actually moved their All-Star game from a state with less restrictive. In other words, it's easier to vote in Georgia, even after this new voting bill, which, by the way, expanded the number of early voting days and actually makes it in many ways easier to vote. But the new law in Georgia is still easier, even now, than the existing laws in the state of Colorado. And as I pointed out yesterday, the state of Georgia has a less restrictive voting bill than New York State, which is where Major League Baseball corporate offices are located, and then Delaware, which is where Joe Biden has spent his entire career as an elected politician. Both of those states, in conjunction with Colorado, have more restrictive laws. And so this is what I was saying last night on television on Fox News. Really what this represents to me is the triumph of stupidity and how many people will not actually even look into existing voting laws and know what's being said, and how many people just run around, including so many people in my industry, the sports media who will just run all over these Twitter streets trumpeting whatever the existing talking points are of their preferred political party without actually spending any time to try and determine what the actual law says. And that is a failure in general of social media overall, which to me, oftentimes, far too often, just leads to people believing total falsehoods. And the end result is that sports, which shouldn't be really that political at all, ends up as a bargaining chip inside of this larger industry and cost us all in a major way in terms of how exactly this is going to end up shaking out. Because I think what is going to happen because of this decision by Major League Baseball is I think we are going to see everything in sports become intensely political right now. Because I think what ultimately has occurred is for a long time, conservatives have been arguing, hey, I just don't want sports and politics in sports, right? They're not arguing for their politics in sports. They're just arguing, saying, hey, the reason why I watch sports is to escape the serious things in life. I don't want for sports to be intensely political. They haven't been saying, oh, you know what? I want people to be playing basketball jerseys with my preferred opinion when it comes to gun rights, or my preferred opinion when it comes to abortion, or my preferred opinion when it comes to prayer in schools, or whatever cultural issue you want to grab a hold of. They're not asking any athletes to put that on their jerseys, right? But now, with Major League Baseball's decision as it pertains to Atlanta, I think you're going to see a full-blown war, because I think what's really happened is this sort of corporate woke-tivism, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, has really just been a belief that there's no cost associated with deciding to embrace far left-wing sports. And I think what Major League Baseball is going to find out is they are going to have a massive hit to their business, and I think it's going to continue to grow in a massive way. And let me just go ahead and point this out. We talked about the question of whether or not Rob Manfred would be abandoning his Augusta membership, since it's evidently so awful to be playing sports in Georgia right now. The governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, posted a letter on Twitter where he was making it clear that he had declined to throw out the first pitch at the Texas Rangers game because, quote, I was looking forward to it until Major League Baseball adopted what has turned out to be a false narrative about the election law reforms in Georgia, and based on that false narrative, moved the MLB All-Star Game from Atlanta. It's shameful that America's pastime is not only being influenced by partisan political politics, but also perpetuating false political narratives. The state of Texas was proud to help MLB host last season's National League playoff games and the World Series in Arlington. However, I will not participate in an event held by MLB, and the state will not seek to host the All-Star Game or any other MLB special events. This decision does not diminish the deep respect I have for the Texas Rangers baseball organization, which is outstanding from top to bottom. I wish the team great success this season. So as you overall break this down, I think this is going to become more and more and more commonplace, where the Republicans now are not going to cede the field of sports to left-wing politics. They're going to battle, and it's going to turn, I think, nasty to a large extent for many different people out there who are sitting around saying, man, you know what? I had always hoped I was just going to be able to watch a sport take place and not have to worry about all of the politics that surround it. That is no longer the case, and we'll see exactly how all of that ends up shaking out. But I am going to talk with Chad Withrow about this. We'll see what he thinks about this larger context. And we'll talk about the Baylor Bears' big win over Gonzaga. Absolutely dominant win, other than a half that Baylor played. They were down 7, I think it was, to Villanova, maybe 30-23, if I remember correctly, in the NCAA tournament before they turned things on in the second half. Otherwise, they were never really seriously challenged at all in this tournament. One of the most dominant Final Four runs I can ever remember. Congrats to Scott Drew. Congrats to the Baylor Bears on their big championship.